Welcome to another episode of the Clever Dicks podcast. In this episode, Duncan and Jim talk about wetsuits versus skin swimming, the pros and cons of each from their perspective. Then Duncan questions why wetsuits are allowed in open water races but other swim aids like swim paddles are not. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Clever Dicks podcast. Duncan, what were you thinking of in terms of wetsuits, and whether are you for wetsuits or against wetsuits?
It's a nasty question, Jim. That's
Thank
really
you.
not a good question to start with. So the topic was actually wetsuits versus skins, not to just diss all wetsuit swimmers. But if I have to take a stance, I'd say non-wetsuit.
You're a non-wetsuit. Well, I am probably a converted non-wetsuiter. I spent most of my time swimming using a wetsuit. My very first coach was a noticeably a person who couldn't handle the cold. In fact, I even saw him swimming in a wetsuit at the tepid baths once because he thought it was a bit cold.
So he was a soft coach. Yes.
He was a soft coach. So I spent many years, and while I don't wear a wetsuit now, I can really blame the person on the other side of the table for that.
The cat?
Sold me a wetsuit and then threatened to burn it if he saw it again. So that's where I come from, where you have very seldom worn a wetsuit. Is that correct?
Yeah, Jim. So obviously, quick off the track scenario before we get to the detail. But as we said in one of the previous podcasts, I started off running, got injured. And my first one or two experiences with open water swimming was swimming for the Ironman in a relay team. And that was just standard practice, right? All sort of triathletes back in the day wore wetsuits. So I borrowed a wetsuit and chafed myself to hell and had sore shoulder. That was a shit experience, right? For me, if you're not in a properly fitting wetsuit, it was awful. So I did 2 or 3 of those in a wetsuit. And then the only other time I have worn a wetsuit, and to this very day, I regret it so much, right? But I did a swim with a bunch of guys that are part of a charity group called madswimmer.com. And basically they do these absolutely stupid, crazy swims, and they raise money for children's charities in the areas, right? So madswimmer.com, good bunch of guys. The swim that we did was the same swim that Lynn Cox did in the 80s across the Bering Strait. So it goes from Russian waters, Little Diomede Island to Big Diomede Island across the dateline. So you swim from Russia to the US. It's about 6 Ks, 6.5 Ks. Water temperature was about 3 or 4 degrees. And we spent a shit ton of money to get there and do the swim. And we were all in wetsuits. And one guy, in fact, wasn't in a wetsuit. He didn't do the full 6 Ks. He did about 2 to 3 Ks, if I recall. But yeah, those are the 3 times I've used a wetsuit. And to this day, I regret that Bering Strait swim. I should have just hacked it. Even if I didn't finish it, I would have felt more accomplished.
More accomplished.
All right. So, Jim, what do we reckon to keep this moving? The pros of swimming in a wetsuit. What are the benefits? What are the good things that come from wetsuits, in your opinion?
So I think there's a couple of reasons why I enjoyed a wetsuit and why many people do. So I think the first one is...
Smell of rubber?
Well, we'll leave that to the bedroom, right? Shall we? But I was talking more about swimming here. So the first part is just temperature-wise. The wetsuit is clearly used for, thermal properties to keep you warm in colder water. So there was definitely that. But the other big advantage that a lot of people really like out of it is the flotation. It really does help keep you on top of the water. It makes the swimming a little bit easier, and almost everybody is going to be significantly, like 5% faster. I think it might depend on how good a swimmer you are. I think the slower a swimmer, the more advantage you get. I think some of those really top swimmers, the advantage is less, but I think there's an advantage all the way through. So I really sort of see the speed, the temperature, and the buoyancy being the main reasons.
So a wetsuit is considered as a swimming aid, right? In terms of various rules and regulations across the world. There's definitely some form of artificial advantage to a wetsuit. To talk to your warmth factor, most wetsuits are spec'd to keep you warm in water of about 13 degrees Celsius. Okay? Then you get obviously a 1-up or 2-up suit to that, which they reference as a thermal wetsuit. Those will go keep you warm in waters of about 8 degrees Celsius, right? So lots of benefit with regards to warmth, as you say. To extract that benefit, obviously, if you're swimming without a wetsuit in the summer, a wetsuit may enable you to swim through the winter, for example. Whereas if you didn't have the wetsuit, you would go back to the pool, or you would just skip open water swimming for those couple of months in winter. So definitely, I think, will assist you with longevity. That's not the right word, but you know what I mean. This coffee
extend your season, right?
Extend your season. There you go. Yeah. That's why you're the clever dick today, right? From a buoyancy perspective, definitely get your hips and your legs up nice and high, and that's going to obviously convert into speed. The little bit of research that I've done over the years probably puts it at somewhere between 10 to 15% benefit, right?
Yeah.
Which I reckon is the reason why, if you go to a swim race and there's one dude in a wetsuit, everybody's going to be in a wetsuit, right? Because just from a competitive level, if you're racing, you're 10% behind that dude straight off the bat, right? So I reckon from a swim race perspective, if there's one dude in a wetsuit, everybody's going to wear wetsuits.
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing. When you get to a swim race, now I've never been a fast swimmer. I was never a fast runner. I've never been fast at anything. Fast into the pub, though.
That's not what your wife tells you. Yeah. Okay.
But so what confuses me about this is why people who are not going to win their age group, they're not going to win the race, wear a wetsuit in a swim. So I kind of get that you don't want to be behind your mate or something like that, and there's a competitive edge to it. But when I go along and I swim in my togs in a race, I just eliminate all the wetsuiters from my mind, because I'm only really swimming against a few people in togs. So that competitive side of it, I do find it quite interesting, because it's very clear that a lot of people really, it helps their competitive spirit. I know a number of really good swimmers who will wear a wetsuit in a race because they want to beat XYZ. Whereas in my mind, it would be, I'd wear togs, and then I've got a smaller field to aim at in my own mind.
So most of the races in New Zealand offer a wetsuit category and a non-wetsuit category, right? So you can win, you can be first, what are you, 107?
I just told you.
100, sorry.
My
Okay, so you can be the first 100-year-old in a wetsuit, or you can be the first 100-year-old in skins. So most of the races do cover both. So from a competitive perspective, I reckon that's as good as it's going to get, right? The question comes in the benefits of swimming without a wetsuit compared to swimming with a wetsuit, which we'll speak to now. But just while we're still on wetsuits, that buoyancy component that we spoke about, obviously the buoyancy helps increase your stroke length, which is, I think, what converts into speed, right?
Well, I think it is getting your hips and your legs up, especially for the blokes, because we sometimes are not known as great kickers. Eh?
Yeah, 100%, right? So that's a big one for the old dudes. The other thing is that I think a wetsuit does give a certain amount of confidence to a swimmer. So you might be new to the open water field. You might be feeling a little bit nervous out there, a little bit nervous of going deep or whatever the case might be. And I think, to your point a little bit earlier, why do people swim in wetsuits in races? There could be a component of that where it's a security blanket, right? Where I'm going to float, I'm not going to be able to sink. You know, if shit hits the fan, I'm still going to be okay.
I think you've absolutely nailed it. There was a young lady, a young woman I swam with quite a few years ago, had actually drowned as a baby.
Yeah.
And had sort of been almost brought up with a fear of water by her parents.
Yeah.
And she was top gymnast, but started getting into it, but was really scared of the water. But as soon as she got into a wetsuit, she was able to go and start swimming in the pool and then in the open ocean. And as she got more and more confident,
she lost the wetsuit. I guess, again, linked to that theme of confidence is you may be able to go out there and swim 2Ks without a wetsuit. Chuck a wetsuit on, maybe those guys are going further, maybe they're going 3 or 4K. So again, talking of the benefits and the confidence and the buoyancy and all of that stuff that comes from it, spend more time in the water, chuck a wetsuit on, go further. Extend your season, as you said, into winter. It's probably why the guys do it, right? I want to ask a question though. English Channel, back in the day, what was his name? Ellis Webb, Captain Ellis Webb. He swam in a pair of togs, pair of goggles, and one swim cap, which has become the international norm or the rules for open water swimming or marathon swimming. If you look at cycling as an example, I'm a great, massive fan of the Tour de France. Back in
Tour de Pharmacy.
Tour de Pharmacy, yeah. Drug dealers on bikes. As long as they're all using drugs, it's fair, right? It's like everybody's using a wetsuit, it's all cool, right? But back in the day, obviously stainless steel bikes, I would imagine they had like 12 gears, thick wheels. There wasn't a hell of a lot of tech that was happening there, and the guys slogged through, 3,500 kilometers of the Tour de France. That same race today has got massively sophisticated carbon fiber frames, 18 to 24 gear ratios. There's a lot of tech that's there. Now, the dude that did Tour de France 100 years ago to the guy that's doing it now are having a very different experience, right? Yes, they're going quicker and all of those good things, but the guy that's swimming the English Channel now is having the same experience as Captain.
So I think I don't know if we're comparing apples with apples.
Of course we are.
Yeah, no. So if you take cycling, you can't cycle without a bike. All that's happened is the bikes have got better. It's not as if they've added something new. If you talk about wetsuits and swimming, they started off in woolen togs, and now we can have super skinny things that even I'd look good if I managed to get into some of those togs, right?
Wow.
Okay, yeah. So that is pushing it.
Let's stop for a second here, right? When Jim swims, he swims in a jammer, right? For those of you who don't know what a jammer is like a knee-length type swimming tog, right? Now, they're supposed to fit tight to reduce drag, all of those things that, everybody knows. However, Jim's little legs, he makes them look like baggy shorts, right?
Jim, you're so sweet. let's take running. I mean, everybody wears shoes, and now you've got carbon fiber, spring-loaded. They've got flubber in them, right?
Yeah.
But they're still running. So I think it's a little bit different. It's not as if you're running with extra sticks so that you've got 4 things on the ground, or cycling with training wheels so that you can go around the corners faster or something like that. That's what swimming with a wetsuit is like. They've just got better bikes, and the runners have got better shoes, and we've got tighter fitting jammers.
We've got nothing. So, what's considered a swimming aid at a race? So we've just said now there's a wetsuit category and a non-wetsuit category, right? And there's a swimming aids. So I know, again, from a marathon swimming perspective, if you wear, for example, even a neoprene cap, that's a disqualification, right? That's considered an aid. If you use neoprene shorts or a wetsuit or anything that's an aid, pair of paddles, pair of fins, etc., it's a disqualification.
So when you get back to like the channel, so I haven't done a heap of research into this, but my understanding is the concept of man, or should we sort person versus nature.
Yeah.
So as soon as you start putting all of these plastic extras in, it's not quite man versus nature anymore. So that was what the like the original English channels and things like that was about. It was a lot of people sort of, there's records going over it, but almost everybody who's done any of those big swims, it's a personal challenge. There's very few people who race it. In fact, I'm not sure whether there's ever been 5 people on the start line and let's see who gets to France first or something like that. That just doesn't happen.
I'm sure it has happened. Hey? I can recall Phil Rush telling us a couple of stories about that. I don't think it happens anymore, but they used to have, proper challenges, and there'd be, 3 or 4 guys going out there and see who can get to the other side the fastest. Which would be pretty cool.
We should do it some more.
See who can do it the slowest.
Most time in the water.
All right, what are the negative things of swimming in a wetsuit? I've got a few.
The negative things for me is there's just extra stuff to manage.
Yeah.
So you've got to remember to take it with you. You've got to hang it up and dry it afterwards. You've got to rinse it. There's that part of it. There's definitely a cost part of it. There is different levels of investment you can do, and they feel more and more comfortable or make you faster and faster and faster. So those are the first 2 sort of downsides of it that I think, other than chafing.
Okay, chafing's a big one.
Yeah.
There's nothing like seeing some dude at Countdown or Woolworths, right? He's got a big hickey mark on his neck, and you think, yeah, what you been doing, mate? And he's got, I swam this morning. Okay, so from my perspective, I think people could tend to become reliant on a wetsuit, right? So it could become a bit of a mental thing where, oh my God, I can't go swimming because my wetsuit's not dry, or my wetsuit's in for repairs. I'm not going to be able to keep up with my group if I'm not in my wetsuit.
I've got a hole in my wetsuit.
Yeah, exactly right.
The water comes through the zip.
Potentially a negative, people becoming reliant on it. The other one is, from my side again, you and I are not the most technical people on the swim sort of community, but because the buoyancy level changes your position in the water, your technique is going to be different in a wetsuit to when you're not in the wetsuit. So as an example, if you're doing some training in the pool during the week, and then jumping in a wetsuit on the weekend, your technique is going to be a little bit different, right? Your shoulder movement, your catch, all of that type of stuff is going to be a little bit different. So potentially a negative. And then 100% agree with you, right? If your wetsuit does not fit properly, there's a long list of negatives, right? So if your wetsuit's too big for you, for example, it's going to let water in, and that water is obviously not going to be able to exit because you've got tight arms and tight legs, and you effectively carry that water with you while you swim. So you're going to be dragging that with you. The other thing is, if it's too big, all of that water in there is going to hamper the warmth benefits of the wetsuit, right? Because you're going to have lots of cold water in your suit. So that's also a negative. And then, as you say, chafing, right? If it's too big, you're going to chafe in places you've never seen before, which is not what you want, right? But maybe, again, a little bit sidetracked. How does a wetsuit work?
Well, really, you get a small amount of water. I mean, the point of it is called a wetsuit. So you've got some water,
not a dry suit, yeah,
underneath the wetsuit that sits up against your skin, but then gets warmed up and basically stays warm. So the neoprene is stopping too much cold coming through, but you've got a small layer of water around you that's warm. So,
cool. 100% correct, right? So if your suit's not fitting correctly, that's not going to work, right? Yep. Okay, give me your ideas of skins swimming. And okay, so when we say skins swimming, there's lots of terminology here, right? It's not like Rogers swimming that we heard in last week's podcast where it's naked swimming. It's swimming in togs with no neoprene, right, is the reference.
Togs being the New Zealand word for a swimming costume.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. I've never heard of togs before I immigrated to New Zealand. Yes. I thought it was like rugby kit, you know. Why would I want to swim in rugby kit? What do you reckon the advantages are of togs?
So togs for me, I enjoy the freedom, especially kind of around the shoulders when you're swimming. Even if I've got a wetsuit.
Oh, and your togs, right? You've got so much freedom. They're so big for you, right? You've got tons of freedom.
Oh dear. Yeah, so it just feels easier to move through. I enjoy just being in the water, and as I said, I spent many years swimming in a wetsuit, and I quite enjoyed it until somebody that I know burnt my last wetsuit. I remain quite happy swimming in a wetsuit. So, but I like it.
Okay, so I agree with you completely, right? There's definitely that sort of tingle on your skin that's just completely magical, which I think you get less of in a wetsuit. There's nothing that, for me personally, that comes as close to nature as being out in the ocean, in your togs, and with the elements, right? So for me, that's definitely part of the attraction. It's the most basic form of exercise, right? So to your point earlier, I don't need a fancy bike. I don't need to keep upgrading my equipment. I don't need anything. I can go and swim. Yes, I need a pair of goggles, but in that same breath, I know a whole bunch of people. Sue Sherwin jumps to mind. You know, she's done ice miles and she's done a whole bunch of swims without goggles. I don't know why she's not blind, but you literally don't need anything to go swimming in your togs. And I think that post-swim high, when you're in your togs, is definitely, for me, bigger and better than that post-swim high, if you've gone out in a wetsuit. And that's, for me, why I do it. I don't know if you agree with the post-swim high scenario. If you take out the shivering.
I was just about to say, you know, my post-swim high goes high, low, because I'm shivering and bouncing around a bit, depending on what the water... Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
And I must admit, I do enjoy just being able to finish a swim, get up, walk to my car, get changed, and that's my swim done for the day. You know, other than hanging I suppose you've got to hang your togs up somewhere when you get home, but there's much less to deal with and manage.
You don't hang your togs up at home. You've got all those fancy hooks in your boot. You've got like hooks for your towel and hooks for your togs and hooks for your goggles. It's like a little department store in your boot.
Doesn't every swimmer's car look like that?
I don't know. You've got a special little tub that's always got some sour jellies in there as well, yeah? Maybe that's a different podcast. The benefits of sour jellies after a swim.
Well, that's part of the after swimming high, isn't it?
I suppose it's relevant to talk to the fact that if you are swimming togs, that you need some time to acclimatize, right? So be it, for example, as the season changes, you need to get used to the temperature of the water and swimming without a wetsuit. And I guess, you know, the more frequently you do it, you can get a little bit further every time you go out there. And before you know it, you know, 16 degrees doesn't feel as cold as what 16 degrees felt like 6 months earlier, as an example. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of science behind acclimatization, but...
Yeah, I have started appreciating colder swimming, and the acclimatization is really key. But what I've also found for myself is that I don't need to swim as far. Sometimes you've got to work out why you're swimming, and sometimes just, you know, if I can spend half an hour in comparatively cold water and get out, I will still feel good. Whereas some of the people that I know might do a 2-hour swim in exactly the same temperature water, and I've got old enough that just doesn't bother me. I'm swimming for my reasons, and you know, so long as they come along to the coffee shop afterwards, I might be on my third coffee, but that's fine, you know.
All right. Why do you reckon the Marathon Swim Association does not allow wetsuits?
I think it goes back to the the human being versus nature argument.
Simple as that, yeah.
I just think it's that, and I think it's one of those things that just historically keeps on going. And I must admit, I'm quite happy with that approach, because as soon as you start changing it to allow swim aids, then you start going down a really, really murky path. So what is acceptable? Okay, you've got a wetsuit now. Next thing you've got paddles, and then you've got flippers, and now I can hold on to an electric torpedo. And, and where do you stop?
Okay. So I swim with paddles, as you're aware.
Yep.
I cop a lot of flack at a lot of the races because I'm the dude that's there in my togs and a pair of paddles, and the guy's like, what the fuck, why are you wearing those? That's cheating. And I always want to say back, hey mate, you're in a wetsuit, that's cheating too. do you know what I mean? But I never have. I've always been nice. And anyway, the reason...
What?
I've always been nice.
Shit, I haven't been to those races.
No. Okay. I've taught you a few swear words. So the reason why I wear paddles, as an example, is because I swim with a little mentally handicapped little dude, Shazil. You know him? He's little. He's, I don't know, 6'1". He's taller than me. He's wider than me, and he's a better swimmer than me, right? So if Shazil decides not to listen to me, or goes a little AWOL, gets tired, whatever the case might be, I need those paddles to be able to catch him, guide him, direct him, and effectively look after him, right? So I'm happy to take the flack for wearing my paddles.
But that's because you're a support swimmer.
I am, in that case, a support swimmer, yes.
So typically, if you weren't a support swimmer,
I would not wear them.
You wouldn't do that. So yeah, I think that's the answer I'd give back, is I actually need these just to keep, to manage my my swim buddy. Right?
Correct. So I need to get a cap that says support swimmer, right? But it does sort of open up the debate, right?
Those big support swimmer over your budgies at the back.
Budgies.
Hey?
Okay.
Yeah, we can get some pink togs with supporty swimmer.
Supporty. Batman and Robin would be better, right? Because we sort of referenced this Batman and Robin, right? So we got to get some Batman talk. So,
yeah.
Point being, I'm standing at a race. There's, 85% of the field are in wetsuits. Wetsuits are classified as a swimming aid. I'm standing there without a wetsuit, but I've got my swimming aid, which is hand paddles. How is that different, right? So before you answer, I think people have got different equipment that they have a tendency to swim faster with, right? So for example, for me, I can swim faster with paddles than I can with fins, for example, or with a wetsuit. I want to have a race where you can sign up and you're allowed one swimming aid, whatever that swimming aid is. If you want to use a pair of fins, knock yourself out. If you want to use your torpedo vibe or whatever it is, go for it.
Hey, my water skiing motorboat.
But I mean, do you hear what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
I mean, how different is a pair of paddles to a wetsuit? I mean, I would love to do the science there and see what the benefit is of paddles versus wetsuit or fins.
But that's where you could, it starts getting complicated again, but you could actually have a swim event where you've got a wetsuit, you've got a togs, no aids, and then you've got an any aids one over there. Yeah, and now all of you got these...
Whoever gets to the other side, man, go for it, right?
But, while races apart, my view on swimming aids is that I am absolutely in support of swimming aids. Anything that gets somebody into the water and makes them feel good is fine by me. I've done a couple of swims down in Raglan, and we went kind of across the harbour and back, and there was a wide variety of swimming aids there. There was a number of people with fins, there's a lot of people with wetsuits, So I don't know whether you can classify it as an aid or a disadvantage. Or people with cameras, it kind of slows you down because you've got to tuck them into somewhere.
Well, it
or
depends
trail
where
them
you tuck them in. Yeah.
Oh, no, I promise you it's a camera. So, yeah, I think it's, what are you entering into it? If you're entering into some event where the rules are quite clear that this is what you can do and you can't do, then,
Okay.
it goes to there.
Put it on our bucket list. We're going to have a race. We'll do it under some
The
format.
Clever Dicks race?
The Clever Dicks race. You can wear whatever damn equipment you want to wear, and we'll give the winner the smallest prize, and we'll give the guy that comes last the biggest prize. Right? So, I reckon we've got to do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just having a quick squiz through my notes here because I was super prepared, and I actually did make some notes. More notes than what you made, by the way. A negative for wetsuits. Everybody wears in a wetsuit. And I don't look guilty if I say to you, dude, did you wear in your wetsuit when you were a wetsuit swimmer? The answer would be,
so what I'm confused about,
yes or
what
no?
I'm really confused about here is how you call this a negative, because this is the positive. As you get into the water, you let it go. Man, it feels wonderful, and it gets you going for the first 2 minutes of your swim. It is the biggest advantage out.
Okay. And then the smell of it when you take off your wetsuit. That's why everybody gets changed in the ocean. They don't take their wetsuit off outside. Okay, so weeing in your wetsuit for me has got to be a negative, right? And then the other thing is that, can you overheat in a wetsuit?
I have never overheated, but I have spoken to people who've complained of getting too hot in a wetsuit.
So again, right, depending on the weather conditions, is it super sunny and super hot outside? What is the water temperature? And maybe the answer to that would be there's different types of wetsuits for different types of swimming conditions.
Well, that's kind of interesting because I'm pretty sure that there are events, whether they're triathlon or swim ones, where below a certain temperature you must wear a wetsuit, and above a certain temperature you cannot wear a wetsuit.
Correct. I think those are the triathlon rules. Stand to be, it's like whatever it is, 18 or 19 degrees.
Yeah, I think because like a marathon swim, there's no wetsuit. You can wear racing togs so long as they're FINA approved.
Yes.
But yeah, it's no thermal, no flotation, no way.
100% correct. But also, I guess, if it's super hot, you can choose to wear a sleeveless wetsuit, right? Which does not give you as much buoyancy and does not give you as much warmth for obvious reasons. You've got less of your body covered, and it does let a little bit more water in down your chest. So I guess if you're looking for the benefits of a wetsuit in really hot conditions, go sleeveless, right? Or maybe even a pair of buoyancy shorts. Which are
so
those
I think the last 5 years
shorts
that I swam, I only ever had sleeveless wetsuits.
But you're tough though, right?
Well, no, I'm the biggest sook. I'm about as tough as a marshmallow, and a fresh marshmallow at that.
So how do we conclude? Wetsuit swimmers are not softies, right? I think there's a lot of banter that goes on between non-wetsuit swimmers and wetsuit swimmers at the races. If I had to summarize, I would say I don't really have a preference, right? Well, my preference is obviously without a wetsuit, but if from a swimming community perspective, I don't care whether you have a wetsuit on or not. I just care that you're out there swimming.
I'm absolutely with you. I think the tog swimmers think they're tougher, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think the tog swimmers love to tease the wetsuit swimmers.
Yeah.
But it really doesn't matter. So long as you're out there swimming, I'll swim with anyone.
You'll swim with anybody that will give you a cup of coffee afterwards, right?
Yeah, that's so true. I'll even buy it for somebody if they give it to me a coffee.
So yeah, guys, that's I guess our take on wetsuits versus skins. Any feedback, please give us an email. Email address is
cleverdicksnz@gmail.com.
The only feedback that we've had so far is we make too much noise with our papers and our pens. But other than that sort of tidying up admin, we're looking good so far, and hopefully You will keep on following us, keep on sharing us, and we've got some good topics coming up. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the water.
Cheers all.